Welcome everyone to the Climate Justice Pavilion here at COP27, where we're about to begin our 1:30 session on community consent as a vehicle for climate protection. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. My name is Nyobi Morris and I'm a youth Ugandan climate activist. I'm a CEO of a non-profit organization as volunteer, and I'm a youth coordinator for Fridays for Future Uganda. Today, I'm going to be your moderator, and I hope to expect a lot from my panelists and also the audience. I want to see interacting audience. That's why I decided to moderate this, because of my background as a climate activist. So on this session, we are going to be talking about how communities can recover from the impacts, but also can build better whenever there is climate catastrophes. When communities impacted by environmental harm and climate change have control over their land, sometimes they are not able to recover so quick. So on this panel, the panelists will share what they can do in order for us to recover so quick without harming any other. I have 4 panelists, and one is from Sierra Leone. So Kita Conte, I'm happy to see you, bro. I'm from Africa like you. And the second person is Nohel Mbutuma from South Africa. And the third panelist is Razana Hassana from Bangladesh. Nice to meet you, because I have many young activists from your country and they are leading for frontline. I like them. The fourth one is Ezio Costa from Chile. Nice to meet you, brother. So I'll give each one of you just 2 minutes to introduce yourself and what you do in your country, so that we can go to the next step. I'll start with my brother, Sokita.
Thank you very much. My name is Sokita Conte. I work for Rematin Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, we work on land rights and environmental justice with communities. Today I'm privileged to talk about something extraordinary that happened in the country sometime this year in August, when a groundbreaking law was passed that enshrined free, prior and informed consent in the law for all kinds of investment projects across the country. This is something that has never happened before in the country, and I am pleased that we can talk about that today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name is Nonke Mbutuma, also from South Africa. What we are doing back home, it's about fighting for the human rights and the land and environment, because the reason that we combine all those 3 things is because they are connected. Right now, there's so much need or the contradiction because of the climate change, of the displacing of our communities where we're living, and we've already managed to push the transport cooperation in our community, where they discovered titanium in our ancestral land, that we need land, we need clean water, we need clean air. Now we don't need them to pollute our air. That's what we are advocating at the moment, and also where they also push to explore oil and gas also in our ocean, which is our livelihood, and besides livelihood, is part of our spiritually cultural practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Rizwana. I'm an environmental justice advocate from Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, we work on very different environmental justice issues. Any environmental issue you can think of is there in Bangladesh, except for volcanic eruption. So as an environmental justice issue, we have to work on a range of issues. Bangladesh is the 8th most populated country of the world. So it's a country that has extreme degree of land scarcity. So there is constant government and corporations for implementation of development projects. So we stand by the side of the traditional livelihood owners like the farmers. We also stand by the side of the forest dwellers. In the official journal of Bangladesh, they are called the tribals, and officially we are discouraged to use the term indigenous people. Bangladesh is a country that has the highest amount of deforestation. The global deforestation rate is 1.3, ours is 2.6, and that has definite consequence on the forest-dwelling indigenous communities, and the government likes to call tribal. So we work with the forest community as well to get recognition of their rights to the forest.
Hello, thank you for the invitation and thank you for the organization of this panel. I'm Ezio Costa. I'm from Chile. I'm a professor at the Universidad de Chile Law School, and I'm also work with the NGO FEMA. We work, as Asmana said, in a number of things. We do have volcanic eruptions, so we have many environmental problems. But especially we are seeing that climate crisis is having lots of impacts in our country. Chile is a high vulnerable country, and we have a number of communities that have been affected by climate crisis. And at the same time, we have a country that sells itself as a country that is working on transition, and especially on an energy transition that can be very good in economic effects for the country, but that is not always looking at those that has been affected by the climate crisis. So one of our goals as an organization, we work in environmental justice as a general matter, but one of our goals nowadays is to push for a just transition and to push for having some way to repair the effects of climate crisis in the different parts of the country. Meanwhile, we move hopefully to an economic system that is more fair, and especially that it's not as extractivist as the one that we have nowadays. Thank you very much.
Oh wow, I like that, because all of you are doing something in your country, and this is what others should learn, because that's the only way we are going to create hope. Hope means actions, and actions have to start from grassroots. So this is where my question comes from. In South Africa, we saw flooding in February this year, where over 400 people lost their homes. I'm not sure, but the number went beyond that. And this is where my question comes from. How do you see community consent supporting climate adaptation and mitigation?
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. South Africa, we've already experiencing or testing the impact of climate change strongly by floods and heat, especially in other parts of South Africa, like where I come from, because we are coming from where it's rural communities. We are dependent on agriculture for livelihood. Now, if the global warming is becoming too hot, it means that the agriculture or the food is going to be a problem in future. And right now, also the rain is abnormal, it's too much. It doesn't help us to manage our agriculture. Now, when it comes to concern to help the climate change, concern, it helps so much because it helps communities to decide or to have a dialogue when these transnational corporations, they are coming to our communities. But if there is no consent, it means that it's a rush because they always believe that consultation is the only way of consulting our communities. But we know that consultation is just a tick in the box. But consent, it gives people a time to breathe, a time to think if this is good or this is not good. This is how it helps so much. For example, in our case, where Shell decided to explore Western oil in our ocean, we push a free prior informed consent as well, where they just our government says that we've been consulted communities, and we said that no, consultation is not enough. We need to give a consent, because at the end of the day, who's directly affected is us as communities. Now we must give a consent. That is how consent, it helps so much when it comes to climate change, because for us as living there, we know each and every species that's living there, how it's so connected to us and to nature in order to mitigate the climate change. But if we just relying on that, we can just push the profit, it means that there will be no future tomorrow. That is why we take many transnational corporations to court that we need to give a consent. And to get a consent is something that's quite difficult, because you need to have lawyers, you need to be supported, you need communities to back your consent, because even the judicial system, it does not, sometimes they are getting confused if this is the right thing or not. But mostly our countries are part of signing binding treaties, which is free prior informed consent. Now for us to do so, we need to fight to make sure that those agreements that are being put in the cupboard after they sign, we put on the table. That's what we are doing as communities at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are so powerful. I like that passion. I want to come back to my friend in Bangladesh. I saw a lot of headlines around June when many young activists were standing in water and protesting. I want to know, on the same question, how do you see community consent supporting climate adaptation and mitigation? Because your country is also victim to climate change, and I think this matters to you too.
Thank you very much. Consent, as I see, is something that has to be really process-oriented, and as she said, it can't only be just ticking the box. And it's important that when you take consent, you give them the whole set of the information. In our part of the world, we see that most of the environmental impact assessment reports of mega projects are not shared with the general people. Even groups like us, when we ask for copies of environmental impact reports, for us to take an informed decision and on the basis of that to say yes or no, we are told that the environmental impact assessment reports are intellectual property rights and cannot be shared. But it is the same government that has been in the Rio conference and has signed the declaration. And Principle 10 of the Rio conference requires the government to disclose all information for people to actually make an informed decision and then give consent. So these documents are more becoming greenwashing, and the government is very protective of these EIA documents. They do them because otherwise they'll not be able to get the foreign investment, but they don't disclose it. Because once they disclose it and share it, and people start giving opinions, they may often find it hard to, put aside people's objections. So in Bangladesh, we have seen that there are successful examples. For example, the government is all for afforestation, and the government does not distinguish between forest and deforestation. The government fails to distinguish between trees and forests. So, forests are being degraded, and the government comes up with afforestation plans with species that are not accepted by the communities, and they don't really give security to the community in terms of energy, in terms of medicine, in terms of food. That there are some community-led initiatives which are well documented and have been proven to be good models to bring back forests, to ensure that people are living in harmony with nature. For example, the community, we don't call it community-based forest, we call it forest village, where a patch of forest is protected for the surrounding indigenous community, and they manage it. They have their own unwritten rules for doing it, and we have seen that if there is a patch of forest here and it's being managed by the communities, following their own unwritten rules, you get the water bodies alive there, you get huge biodiversity there. Right next to this, there is another patch of forest which is managed by the government that's either barren or that has alien species standing on it, and the streams are all dried up. But the government is reluctant to accept the model of the community because the government has a development agenda. And that development agenda is top down. It is not discussed, not debated, not approved, not owned by them. But since the government is out there to push for that government, that development agenda, which we call a vested agenda, it actually does not exhaust the process, the real process of taking consent. It does all the EIA reports in English. How many communities in Bangladesh speak English? How many of them read English? How many of them understand English? So there, yes, they said that yes, we have consulted people and they have, even if they say no, there is no process for the government to follow as to why the community no is being overruled or what. So consent is there in a very limited way. EIA is officially being denied, so we file appeals to the Information Commission. Even the Information Commission thinks that EIA reports are intellectual property rights and cannot be shared. So we are now challenging it. So we yet to have a very firm, set process of taking consent. What is being done there in Bangladesh is brainwashing and bullying.
Thank you so much. I gave you all the time to finish. My friend, what do you think? Because we saw Sierra Leone flooding and now it is time to recover.
Thank you so much. So this is why consent of communities is important for climate adaptation and resilience. In 2018, we had a new government in Sierra Leone, and one of the first actions of the government was to develop a framework to exploit our forest resources in a transparent and efficient way. Basically meaning that the government was going to be involved in timber exportation to other countries. In that same year, the communities we were working with across Sierra Leone were developing bylaws to protect their forests and natural resources. So they had rules on replanting of trees across riverbeds. They had rules that set aside protected areas of their forest. No one could touch those. They had rules banning charcoal burning. They had all sorts of rules to ensure that they that were suffering from the brunt of the adverse effects of climate change would begin to address that. So in the same country, you had communities taking steps to preserve the natural resources that they had, their forests and all, but then you had a government that was in charge of the whole country, putting in place mechanisms for destroying the forest. So essentially, when you put these two interests together, who would you want to be making decisions concerning climate change issues? Communities or the government? So it was very clear for us that if we would stand any chance at all of fighting against the negative impacts of climate change, we needed to have communities involved in the process. They needed to have the ability, the capacity, the right to determine what happens on their land. And that was what informed the fight that led to the Customary Land Rights Act that was enacted this year, which enshrined community consent for all types of developments on land in rural areas. So for me, the argument is very clear. Communities have a sense of land belonging to their ancestors, to the present generation, and to those who are yet to come. And so they are serious about preserving, about stewarding, about ensuring that land and nature is carried over to the next generation. Governments, on the other hand, are concerned about revenue generation. They need money to spend. And so if we leave everything in their hands, we are doomed. This is why I think communities must have a stake in these kinds of discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My friend from Chile, Ezio, what do you think about this?
Thank you. I think that we have to step back a little bit and to think why are we doing the project that we are doing? We usually talk about consent or about consultation afterwards a project was already created by someone for some reason that is usually not is usually not for the things that a community needs, but to invest and to create some earnings. No? So when we talk about consent or consultation, it is most of the times a process in which communities are being object of the ideas and the projects of someone else, the government, international investors, or whoever. And communities are not therefore there to put their needs and their opinions in the way that they want to build their land and community, but in a position in which the only option that they have is to block somehow these projects and the worst part of these projects. And we usually have to create, or we are usually in a position of adversaries between the project, the government, and the community. So maybe the idea of having consent or the idea of having a best way to consult communities should be created from communities' needs. And when we talk about climate adaptation and resilience especially, we should be creating these projects from communities' needs. This is very hard because the investor side of the project is not always keen to co-create the projects with communities. But if we are actually thinking in a way to create a long-term scenario that is useful for next generations, for future generations, I believe that to take a step back and to have this question before the creation of the project is very needed. We don't have that in Chile, of course, not at all. We don't have that anywhere. I'm just thinking what we could do. We are moving towards, in Chile, we are moving towards a better consultation process with Escazú agreement, which is a regional agreement in Latin America that it has been built from Principle 10 on a Rio Declaration. So we are now, hopefully we are now going to have a best way to do public participation. But I still think that public participation could work in some areas of development, but when we're talking about climate adaptation, it's not enough. And if we actually want climate adaptation to be something important for the people, we have to create the incentives for that participation. And the best incentive that we can have is to put the needs of communities inside the project. And that is why I believe we need to do this kind of process from a more from the beginning of the projects and not from the middle as we do it nowadays.
Okay, you say that communities need to be put on front, right? Who is going to do that? Because Chile, like I heard that it was not allowed. Actually, they wanted to write a constitution to add in climate change, and you guys didn't agree. So who is going to put that on front when your government wasn't allowed to write a constitution?
It's a very good question, and it hurts a little bit because we worked a lot to have a new constitution, but it was rejected. However, the new constitution that was written and rejected, it had a very good constitution, environmental constitution, a lot of environmental rules, and it has rules about climate change, about adaptation, and so on. And I believe that those rules were not the ones that were rejected by the people. Even when the constitution as a whole was rejected, the discussion about the different parts of the constitution was not about the environmental part of the constitution. Most of the people and most of the political parties agreed with having a constitution that actually changed the way that we relate with nature. And if we are lucky enough, and I have a little bit of faith about this, we are going to have a new process. The political parties are discussing about this, and apparently there is an idea of having the ecological part of the constitution like the one that we had in the one that it was rejected. However, and this is the important part because your question is who is going to do this?
Yes, who?
And the idea that was in that constitution that was rejected, and the idea that I think that we have to push forward, is that these kind of decisions are not to the central government to make by themselves. And I agree in this point. The government has a short-term view that it's impossible to break. We need people making these decisions. But we need people in a way that is institutionally organized. Because if we do consultations like to everyone, it's impossible to make everyone to consent about something. So we need a way to govern territories and communities that can lead to consent with the needs of the present generation and the future generations and nature itself. We have these three actors when we are taking this kind of decisions. The constitution that was rejected consider this, and I hope that I will see a constitution in the future that will have these three views as well.
Thank you so much. We are going back to a friend from South Africa. So we are talking about community consent. How can community consent coexist with swift transition that is necessary, according to you?
It's very possible because the transition is what all the time communities that were crying for. That the way the extractivism is so pushing our ecosystem, it's a burden to our system. Now you can see that even when we said that it can coexist, because when we talk about transition, we are not just talking about transition, we are talking about a sustainable transition, which is something that is going to last long. Those are the things. Our states are more relying on fossil fuel. That is the only thing that they see that it can develop our countries. Right now, they are more pushing the fossil fuel, but at the same time, we are talking about the mitigating of the climate change. Like for example, when the courts in South Africa just give the communities that they must give a consent before the mining rights being granted. It was very clear to our government in South Africa that if the courts give those rights, it means that there will be a disaster. There will be no mining in Africa. That means we want Africa to be undeveloped. That's not true. Development is not just only extractivism. And even if the extractivism is there, we need to give a consent. And the transition that we want to see a renewable energy. And we want to see a solar energy. We want to see a windmill. Those are the things. Because and mostly, there's a propaganda outside there that even if you are talking about the solar energy, you need mining. But what we're saying, we've already mined a lot. Yeah. The earth needs to breathe. There is quite a lot of minerals out there. Now we need to recycle, we need to do better. And to do so, we need to make sure that our indigenous knowledge, our indigenous traditions are being respected and are being used a part of this transition. But if it's still excluded, our indigenous knowledge, it means that this is not the transition that we want to see.
Thank you so much. Forward the mic to the friend from Sierra Leone. How do you see?
Well, very clearly, the right to free, prior and informed consent puts power in the hands of communities. So that means they can require information that is necessary for them to make decisions, informed decisions. And they can decide whether to accept or reject a particular project. And in my experience, communities would not reject projects that help to sustain their environment. So I definitely see a boost for green projects or replacement projects coming in. However, I must sound that it is important that we do not, in a rush to swiftly transition, seek to override the rights of communities. We agree that green projects are good, but they must be subject to the rights of free, prior and informed consent. And it must go through the process of making sure that communities understand what the impact will be on their environment, on their land, and on their rights before those projects commence. So, in as much as I agree that there has to be a swiftness, we should not sacrifice consent on the altar of swiftness. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. We need more capacity building in communities, right? To understand how everything works. I can give it to my friend from Bangladesh. So, I'm still on the same question. How can community consent coexist with the swift transition that is necessary? Bangladesh.
See, for any transition to be sustainable, you have to ensure that it is acceptable to the people you are making it for. You can't call yourself democratic and at the same time impose decisions. You can't call yourself a democratic nation and deny your people right to participate, access to information, and right to seek justice. Similarly, at the global level, the global leadership has to be democratic in that our realities vary. And when we talk about the transition, we set a goal that's common, but yet the ways of reaching it can be different. And the ways of reaching it for different countries have to be something accepted by the different countries and its population. So how else, let me throw back the question to you, how else do you think swift transition is possible? If you do not take community confidence into consideration, you get into a situation of conflict. And that is exactly what we are seeing now around the world. More and more resistance,
Even in my country.
more and more blockage being created. And why on earth will you think of a transition that will not be accepted by the people? What gives you the confidence that you understand it better than those whose lives it will be affected? So I think the only way to ensure that it's sustainable, that it avoids conflict, that it is democratic, that it is accountable, the community is.
All of you are saying that of the community is very, very important. Okay, we come back to my man. How do you see this in Chile?
I think what Ismael said, I mean, I can do like just this. Those ideas are the main ideas, I think. How can you do the transition without people? I mean, who is doing transition? People are doing transition. We are doing transition. So we have to agree in what we are doing. And if you believe that a technocratic decision can override democratic processes, then we're not talking about a green, just environmental transition, but we are talking about the transition from democracy to autocracy, and that's precisely what we don't want. And this is very important for the environmental movement. I think we are hoping to save the world because we are hoping to save nature, but also to save ourselves, to save society, and we want to do this via democratic processes. When someone says something like, well, we will have to sacrifice this community because we need minerals to build, I don't know, solar power plants, then these people that is saying that, he or she is not working for a better environment, is not working for a transition, it's probably working for just profit. No?
Okay.
You have to do a transition that is with people because it's people that is doing the transition.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, maybe what we have to work in is in communication and how we are going to move from the way that we are doing things right now to a new way to do things in which we relate with nature in a more harmonic way. And I think that's the question that we as a whole have to answer, and how to block this autocratic, technocratic way to think about environmental solutions for climate crisis.
Okay, sometimes leaders say that it requires a lot of time and a lot of resources that is not available to do the consultation within the community. So sometimes they prefer to send in surveyors to check where all their plans are going to be implemented rather than going to community. So do you have enough resources within your government that you believe they are able to consult people every time they are going to carry out something? Is there enough resources for your government?
No, usually there is not enough resources to do that. Usually there are not enough resources to do anything. That's the problem. You know? And if we are talking about urgency, well, yes, it's urgent to take action, but there are things that are very, with this kind of discourse, you put the urgency in the side of taking away rights from communities, and not in the side of, for example, tax the rich people, to ban private jets, to do things that are actually changing the way that we live in a way that social justice is enhanced. So there is a false dichotomy when you say, not you, but when someone says that we have to move faster by taking away rights from community.
Thank you. So we are going back to the question of consent, but on empowerment. And I will start with my friend from Sierra Leone. Why is the approach of legal empowerment important in fostering community consent?
Absolutely. Many of us are conversant with the law, right? We know what the law is. We are driving our cars, there is a traffic light, it's red, you know what to do. From agriculture to space research, our lives as civilizations are governed by rules, by laws. And we've seen the power of the law. And often when people know the law, when they know what their rights are, when they know what the obligations of other parties are, they are empowered to act. They feel strengthened to take action. And we believe, as a legal empowerment organization, that the best thing you could do for communities, for people, is not to keep the law in the books or to leave the law for the lawyers only. People should be able to know the law. They should be able to use the law. And ultimately they should be able to change the law if the law doesn't work for them. And we have been using this particular approach in our work in Sierra Leone and of course other countries with very powerful results. And ultimately that led this year So the passage of what I think probably is the only law so far that exists in the world that allows communities to veto any type of investment that happens on their land. We have checked, we've not seen that anywhere else yet. That came about as a result of communities being empowered first to know what those imperfect laws were, the colonial laws that govern their land and their natural resources that were being applied and that were not protecting their rights and interests. And once they knew that they were insufficient, they came together, organized themselves to change those laws. That no, we want laws that speak about our rights and our interests. We want laws that put us in the driving seat. And ultimately, that organizing led to them marching on Parliament on the 6th of August to tell members of Parliament that you need to pass this law now, the Customary Land Rights Act, to ensure that we take control of our land and environment. So I believe in the power of the law. The law becomes even more powerful when people know it, when they can act together to enforce their rights. And I think ultimately we are holding absolutely dear to that mantra and to that approach, that people need to know what the law is. And if the law does not work for them, they should be able to change the law and make it suitable for their needs. So ultimately, if this spreads across the world and we have a movement of empowered people, I think we are almost there in dealing with the issue of climate change.
Thank you so much. We are coming to South Africa. So, many rules when they are put in place, sometimes they can just be there and people don't follow. Have you seen that? In Africa it happens, like laws are passed and people pretend to follow, but you know we have corruption at some point, so they end up bypass the law. So I want you to explain to me how we can go about that, but also why is it important approach for this law to be in place?
It's very true what you say, that sometimes the laws are there, but people decided to ignore the laws. And we've experienced it quite a lot in South Africa. South Africa, we have the best constitution in the world, which protects the rights of South African citizens. But when it comes to implementation, it's another story. Right now, any company, any foreign company that wants to do a development in South Africa must consult community. But there's many cases where the companies, they just bypass us. And our own state allows that. Like there is no law. They can just do as they please. The only people that they just push is the communities to say that no, our laws are very straightforward. You cannot take a shortcut here, and we need to be consulted. And recently, as I was mentioning, the case of Shell. Shell was given authorization by our own government that they must go and explore oil and gas without any consulting us. They just forget that, as my brother mentioned, that if communities, they know their rights, they have been informed, you cannot escape that. Because we know that we have a right to culture, which is something that they think we don't know. And we fought that, we use that, our culture needs to be protected. Our consultation also needs to be protected. It cannot that any companies just come and do as they please, because they are under pressure of getting money. But to do so, you need to fight, you need to organize communities. This is what we've done right now to make sure that our rights as communities are being protected. To do so, you need to have a clear constitution. As I'm saying, South Africa will have the best constitution, but that constitution, it needs the communities to know their rights. If they don't know, our rights are always being violated. And to push, you always been painted as anti-development in your society. This is what we've been called. But we don't mind as long we protected the Mother Earth. The Mother Earth is part of us. If we are not doing right now, that means there will be no next generation.
True. Thank you so much. Rizwana, I want to ask you the same question.
By now I have forgotten the question.
Okay, let me repeat.
But the thing is, you see, a company that does not have money to take people's consent, to me, is bankrupt from the very first day. You have money to go for huge investment. You don't want to consult community because you don't have money is something that is just not acceptable. And consent is not a social right or an economic right or a cultural right that the states will address according to its economic ability. Consent is a political right. It's a civil right. So denying a civil right and denying a political right is like denying the first generation of human rights. No company, no investment, no government can justify. If you have money for election, you have money for consultation. And it does not have to be a hugely expensive process. If you have a localized system of government, if you have local governments, they can do it. Just that you have to speak the truth. Sometimes they go for extensive consultations, but they conclude it in a wrong way because they don't disclose the whole set of information. And ignoring a community or saying that the existence of this community can be sacrificed for this mega project is not the right way to go by it. Particularly when it comes to climate change, we already know the impact of some of the mega projects, not only on that given community, but the whole world. So I think when we talk about consent, we need to do that pricing also. That denying consent and imposing mega projects, how costly it can prove, not only to that community, but to the whole globe, to the global community. So I think the reason for taking consent is to ensure that whatever development you do is sustainable. And in order for the development to be sustainable, it has to be climate resilient. So if you believe in sustainable development and do not exploit it in a bad manner just to get it vetted saying that this is a project of the government, so it is sustainable. I think it's very, 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 very important that we all attach real meaning to it and do not find out excuses not to consult it.
Thank you so much. Back to South America. Why is the approach of legal empowerment important in fostering community consent? I just want to give you 2 minutes because you have a lot, I know.
Legal empowerment, it's a way to create possibilities of balance in the decisions that governments are making. So when we write laws in the country, we're supposedly thinking that people know that laws and that those laws are working in a way that enable rights. However, if we don't do legal empowerment and if people do not know how to use institutions, then the result that we are having it's a unwanted result. It's an unfair result, and it's a result that it's not helping anyone. That's my point. You can think maybe if you're an investor, you can think that if people do not participate, then you will have a more, quick way to put your project in the land. But that's a very short-term view. You will have more conflicts and more costs if you do not consult with people and if you do not talk with people that actually know the rights. To do that, you need communities that are prepared to this conversation. And legal empowerment is the way to prepare communities for this conversation.
Okay, before you pass the mic, I want to ask you, are all the laws that have been put in place being followed in your country? Because in my country, there are many, but people don't follow them. Even the people who implemented them are the ones who always ignore and they use bribe and just continue with what they like. Anyway, I'm sorry, but this is happening in my country, Uganda. So I wanted to know, how is it in Chile? What if it is implemented? Will it be followed?
No.
Okay. You go to the last
it's,
question.
it's everywhere the same. Yeah, it's a global phenomenon. It's a human phenomenon. We don't follow all the laws that we put in place. However, we have to try to make people follow those laws. And especially, I'm a lawyer, a lot of us are lawyers, and if we are working in create new laws to enhance fairness in the way that environmental issues and environmental decisions are made, then we have to also do the work to enable those laws to be compliant.
Thank you. I want to ask you the last question, and I want 2 words from you. What do you think national governments and donor institutions can do to better support community consent? Just 2 words and pass the mic. Can I repeat?
Legal empowerment.
Legal empowerment? Okay. Forward.
Just comply with the election pledges. They make many promises during the election time, just to be respectful to that.
Okay. Follow what you promised. Okay. Continue.
Respect the laws.
Respect the laws.
Yeah.
I would say communities own their land and natural resources. They are the most directly affected when things go wrong. So everyone should listen to them and give them space at the table when it comes to decision making. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This was insightful. So I'm going to open the floor for Q&A. If you have any question, please just raise up your hand and the mic is coming to you.
Hello, this is a great panel. Thank you all so much. In the United States, we have something called community engagement, which is that you get 2 minutes to respond to an environmental impact statement of hundreds of thousands of pages. So this is pretty revolutionary that you've gotten this law. But I'd like to know, no communities or tribes are a monolith. So how do you ensure, so what's the process for getting a community consent? There could be very different opinions. Some people might think that they're going to get jobs or they're going to get some kind of remuneration. So what's the process for getting to consensus around community consent?
Thank you so much. We're going to answer that, respond to that, and then we'll take another question. First, who has the mic? Yeah, you first get the mic. Just
Thank
have
you.
1 minute.
Thank you so much. I agree with you that communities are not monolithic, and so you have people, especially young ones in communities who would prefer to have jobs and would not be averse to seeing a bit of the forest go away so that they could have jobs. And so the law recognizes that and does not require 100% consent. So what it says is if 60% of the community or the families that are involved agree to a particular project, then it can go on. But then there are arrangements that can be made within communities to ensure that those who do not support the project do not have their interests adversely affected. So for example, if a family or a community wants to lease land to a company, those who oppose would have their land retained from the leasing process. It will only be those that acquiesce to the process that will have their properties leased out to a company. So the reality is you do have differences in communities, but then what happens is that those who do not support a particular project are not compelled. And we've had situations where we have supported those who have said no to projects to secure their rights, and their land and interest have not been included in whatever transactions that are agreed to with corporations.
Thank you so much. We go to another question. Yeah, you can come.
Hello, I am Nandita CDAxCOP from Chile, from NGO named 1.5. I have the following question. I can write it down to avoid misunderstanding.
No worries.
Is community consent the same as binding citizen consultation? Sometimes the binding citizen participation will be a double-edged sword with respect to the environmental issue, particularly with the strong lobbying power of big companies. A concrete case is that of the Domina Mining Project Chile, which means a serious impact on a marine area, great biodiversity values. In that case, a consultation was carried out, and the communities in La Llera were in favor of the project in a 96% because the company had committed to implement infrastructure for the supply of drinking water. How do you think this type of situation should be addressed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that wonderful question, and I would like to forward it to my friend from Chile.
This is not very good for Francisco because we know each other. So
Okay, thank you.
He's looking for other answers. So I can answer it.
Yeah, prove. Okay, forward it to my friend from. Okay.
So there is a vast difference between consent and consultation. And in Sierra Leone, we considered that and we discarded consultation because actually it could mean nothing. Okay? To be consulted simply means to be told about something, but it does not require your yes or no for it to proceed. So we said communities needed to have the power to say yes or no to a project. And if they say yes, it can go on. If they say no, it should not go on. And one of the things that we have in the law with respect to the commitments that companies can usually make, and we've seen this in GATIs, they come in with all kinds of promises, but these promises remain in the oral realm. It's what they say. They don't put it down in writing. And so when communities want to claim that, they tell them, oh, by the way, it's not in the lease agreement, so you cannot claim it. So one of the things we have in this new Customary Land Rights Act is that there has to be a written lease agreement between the communities and the company. And every single promise you make has to be included in that particular lease agreement. And in fact, the law sets out a template to make sure that companies will not deviate. There is a template that companies have to follow as a minimum. Communities could add to that, but then I would say, if we can, let's always choose consent as opposed to consultation because it will definitely not mean much for communities.
Thank you so much. We take one more question from the next segment. Yeah, just one more question. Oh yeah. Just a quick one. You may have one.
Alright, thank you very much. I joined the discussion a little late, but I was interested very much in the last part. I'm coming from Zambia, and we are part of the Voices for Just Climate Action project. I was following the question about implementation of the laws. It's a problem in our country as well. Very good written down laws, but in terms of enforcement, I would say, and following them, one of the big challenges has been the aspect of making the laws simple for communities to understand. So in your development of laws that can be community friendly, are you considering ways of making these laws simplified so that communities can understand and they are able to participate in enforcement?
Thank you so much. I will give that one to my friend from South Africa. Forward to her. Just 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. The laws, the English is too difficult for us to understand as communities. It's really, really difficult. But it's our duty as activists and the partner organization to simplify, to make sure that our communities understand. Otherwise, as it's written there, they are not changing. And to change the English in a way that communities to understand, I don't think it's possible at the moment because the English, it was not written for us. It's written for the people, the lawyers, not for the communities. Yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you so much. You have any word?
It's not only about simplifying the law, it's also about simplifying the processes and making the processes.
Thank you. And you? One more.
With tried in the new constitution. The new constitution was written in a way that was readable for anyone. And we faced the lawyers community. Lawyers don't want to have laws that are too simple because they think that, I don't know why, but they don't like it.
But it work out still. I know, but thank you so much to whoever joined us. One more question? Okay. Put on the mic. You know, just we are running late.
My question is really simple. I applaud you on getting the law passed. And we have lots of laws on the books in the U.S. as well. What we've noticed is that if you make it legal in some way, they change the law. My question is how easy will it be for them to change the law so that you no longer can have that too?
Okay, you can take that.
Great question. I think making sure that the communities are behind the passage is very critical. So it's not just one person or one group, it's communities across the country. So they know what they fought for, they know what they had in the law, so they will resist every attempt to change the law. And next year we're having elections, okay, we're having general and parliamentary elections. And one of the things these committee members said when they went to parliament was to remind the MPs that we're having elections next year, so we're watching who is voting for and who is not voting for. So I think the power behind sustaining a good law is not a person, it's a community. Thank you.
Hope they have answered you very well. So I want to wrap up this by saying thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for my insightful panelists. I learned a lot from them and we need to give them at least an applause for them. Thank you so much.